My mother was a caretaker. She had this compulsive need to take care of other people at the exclusion of her own needs. That's why she married my father. He was just a walking bundle of needs. And one day, as he was in prison yet again, she finally decided that that was too much for her, and she divorced him way back before divorce was cool. So we moved to another town, and she dated for a while. It turns out most of the people she dated were pretty self-sufficient and really didn't need taken care of, so she gave that up as a lost cause and never dated again. She had us 4 kids. I mean, that was enough to take care of, and she did a good job of it. She put us all through college, including me, and I was the last one because I was a bit of a problem child, surprisingly. But as soon as I graduated, then she looked around. She didn't have anybody to take care of, and just in time, her parents, my grandma and grandpa, got sick. So that was good. She took care of them for 2 or 3 years, and then they died. Not because of anything she did, but because that's what happens to people. Well, when they did pass away, then she was stuck. She didn't have anybody. And so she turned to genealogy, which was her way of vicariously taking care of the entire family post-mortem. She was the last one of the line. I mean, she had no there were no other kids in her generation, and everybody else had passed away, so she was without anybody. So she took care of her genealogy, and during this genealogy phase of hers, I worked in a nursing home, taking care of people. There were a lot of characters there, but one I remember in particular. His name was Frank. He was 90 something, back when being in your 90s was like, generally, people who were 90 were dead. And Frank was about 2/3 of the way to dead. He was all crippled up with arthritis. He was in this permanent fetal position, and he couldn't see. His eyes were stuck shut, and he'd be like this, but he couldn't move. He couldn't see, but incredibly, he was pretty upbeat considering his situation. He loved these old German songs, and he would sing them. And in fact, there was a woman down the hall, we called her Aunt Vi, and she was 101, which was like living mummy. We had to be careful moving her for fear she would crumble into dust. She was that old. And she also loved these old German songs. And so every once in a while, I would wheel his bed down to her room, and they would lay there side by side on their respective beds, and they would sing old German songs and just have a good old time. Well, one of the things I did with Frank, of course, I had to feed him. And one day, as he was eating this sort of pablum stuff, he goes, you know, it's pretty dry. I could, if I could have a little beer to wash that down with, it'd be much better. Well, I wasn't sure if he should have that because of the medication he was on, so I asked the doctor, and the doctor said, look, Frank has never had a visitor. He probably has no living relatives at all, and he has one possession. He's got that little plastic radio. That's it. Give him a beer. So I started giving him a beer with lunch, and then one day he said, this stuff still pretty dry. I could use maybe a little sausage. So I would give him a sausage and beer with his lunch. And then one day he was eating, he said, you know, it's beer and sausage. It's really good, but it'd be perfect perfect if I had just a little bit of cheese to go with that. So I dispensed with all that pablum kind of stuff, and his lunch became beer and sausage and cheese. And he was so excited by this that he had beat the system. He was like my buddy, and he would tell me all these stories, and he kept talking about little Anna. Thought that it was his wife, and so I asked him. He said, "No, no, that's Louie's daughter." Louie? Yeah, Louie, my brother Louie. That sounded kind of familiar. So I went home. I talked to Mom about it, and she said her eyes got big. She went, "Louie, that was Frank. Frank, we thought he was dead. Everybody did." Ah, and she pulled out these charts and graphs and this tree and told these stories and said, "You see what the Louie was my father, your grandfather. I'm his little Anna." Whoa, that was perfect. Here we got a guy that needs everything. I mean, he is a living, breathing, take care of kind of person. And Mom is his only living relative. So we go over there. She takes all these charts and graphs and stuff, and she describes them to him because, of course, he can't see. And she goes through the whole thing and tells these stories, and he remembers the stories, and so she's got it confirmed, and so she delivers the punchline. She says, "That means I'm your little Anna. I'm your only living relative." And Frank's confused by this. He thinks about it a little bit. "You're Anna?" "Yeah, I'm your little Anna." I don't give a shit." It is a horrible thing to watch your mother shrink 2 sizes right in front of your face. But that's what happened to me that day. Mom went back home. She packed up all her stuff, all her charts and graphs and everything else, and she put it all away. She started calling friends, and she started traveling. She went everywhere. For the next 3-4 years, she was off to Europe and Alaska and doing tours and doing bus things and hikes. And she had always wanted to do that, but she never did because she was taking care of everybody else. And so it took Frank not giving shit for her to finally take care of herself.